Well, welcome everyone today to our January webinar. I am AJ Ootman, your Customer Success Manager. Joining me today on call is Jeannie Clark.
Hi, everyone. And I do want to echo AJ's sentiment. We sincerely thank you all for taking the time out of your busy day to attend today's webinar. We recognize many of you are preparing for the upcoming term. Some of you are already well into the new term. And as AJ mentioned, many of you are managing the challenges of this unprecedented weather. We're here in the Midwest, so we're familiar with the cold, but to all of you braving it, thank you again for joining. And we appreciate your engagement. And we're really appreciative that you made the time just to, in your busy schedule, to connect with us. Back to you, AJ.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Jeannie. All right. Well, I hope that just before all of this weather, that you all did have a great holiday season and a good kickoff to your new year. I don't know about you all, but I have given a number of bad gifts over the years. As you can see on screen, my puppy Ryder, I have given some terrible gifts to. I have learned that any type of stuffed animal he will shred, and that is going to lead to an emergency vet visit. So now I've improved my gift giving skills, and he only gets silicone toys or industrial rubber. And so fortunately, this year he got a lot of those in his stocking. I'm curious from you all, what were some of the good gifts that you either receive or gave this year? So if you just want to pop those into chat, you also can unmute yourself if you want and just mention some good gift you receive or gave this year. Okay, I see a Sharky blanket. That's awesome. Jeannie, was there any good gift that you got or received this year?
We're
Oh,
all
time with
about, yeah, gift of time with the family. You can never get more time back. So I truly indulged in all the family time. My daughter did get a Bitsy. I don't know if any of you have young kids. It's like the new age Tamagotchi. Um, I'm now hooked on this thing. So that's my gift.
Awesome. And I see, Zachary, I'm with you. Money is my favorite gift. Let's be honest. Okay, great. I'm seeing a number of kazoos. Cool. All right. Well, all year at Web Checkout, we have been working on a gift for all of you. And that is our newest feature that I am introducing today, which is categories and attributes. I've been with Web Checkout for about 5 years now, and over the years, what clients have consistently reached out to me and to other members on the team is looking for a different way for their patrons to be able to search that isn't just tied to resource types. Some of you have categories or items that technically belong into multiple categories. And now with attributes, you can tag equipment with descriptive features so that students can search for exactly what they would need. Think about if your checkout center could function like B&H's website or Amazon, where patrons could select various parameters to drill down to get their perfect piece of equipment. For example, I'm just navigating over on screen to B&H's website. On my page, I've already looked up my Apple MacBook Pro because I'm shopping for a laptop. Well, on this page on the left-hand side, there's a number of categories that I can look through to specify which items I'm looking for. Right now, this page is pulling over 300 laptops. I don't want to sort through all of those. So I can use all of these attributes such as price, display size, storage capacity, RAM, etc., to get exactly what I'm looking for. Now, I'm really looking for high-speed laptop, so I'm wanting to make sure that the RAM is over 48 gigabytes and that I have a processor that has at least 14 cores. So I'm going to update those attributes now. I'll select the plus icon. And under RAM, I'm going to select that 48 gigabyte as my baseline, but this will allow multiple attribute selectors. So I'll go ahead and select anything that's higher than that 48 and we'll apply. And then I'm going to also go down to the processor and I'll select the Apple M4 Pro 14 core. Now, once I changed those selectors, this narrowed my search down to 32 items. So significantly narrowing it so that I don't have to wade through the hundreds or even thousands of laptops that are on this page. Now, we were thinking about some of the use cases that you may have for attributes. Some of the use cases that you all have brought to us over the years are media centers and loaner laptops providing software packages. So allowing patrons to select attributes like the Adobe Creative Suite, or does it have the Microsoft tools installed? Accessibility tools, so things like, is there a screen reader or are there hearing devices as part of this, as well as other paired accessories. For film departments, thinking about the right equipment paired with accessories that fit it. So you can think of a tripod mount. Does it fit the camera that I am checking it out with? For production departments, thinking about things like skills-based packages. For our housing centers, many of them may have some equipment that's dedicated to instructional needs and separating that from the bulk of their standard housing equipment. For culinary centers, and yes, we do have culinary centers using web checkout, we thought of equipment that may be based on a particular cuisine type that you're cooking or demonstrating at a particular time. For theater and props departments, this is something that has come to us a lot, is the request for the ability to search for props or costumes based on things like time period, size, color, theme, etc. Now, I want you all to just be thinking about in the back of your mind, what are some of the use cases that you have at your center or another checkout center that's at your university for category and attribute searches? That's going to guide our discussion that we're going to have a little later during today's call. But I am curious, Jeannie, what are some of the other use cases that you thought of for categories and attributes?
Yeah, AJ, you have a great list to get us all started to think about how we can apply this to, our everyday use today. But the reason this feature actually was brought to us, it was actually the School of Architecture. So architecture schools could absolutely benefit from this feature. We can thank the School of Architecture at the University of Texas at Austin. I had the pleasure to actually visit the materials lab last week, and the material lab has over 20,000 items. And assigning just a single resource type to their items did not address their needs. Students need the ability to search for their item of interest based on various attributes. So think about the composition, the form, even the process of how the item may be used. And so again, with this new feature, they're able to select multiple attributes and categories to find their item of interest. So as you all are aware, web checkout is so configurable. And as AJ is going through his demonstration today, this is just one example. Please do consider, what questions are you asking your students about their projects so they have the equipment that they need? And then also, what questions are they asking you about your equipment? Those can be considered your categories and attributes so that you ensure your students have the right gear at the right time so they can complete their projects. I am interested to hear all of your thoughts later today. So back to you, AJ.
Absolutely. And as part of that, I'm actually going to send out a poll now because I'm curious how many of you have been looking for this. So I'm going to launch the poll. You should see a poll that is popped up. If you're using multiple screens, it may have popped up on a secondary screen. But the poll is just asking, what are your attribute needs? So my patrons have needed this for years, or I may be open to using it. I want to find out a little more, or I don't want to do anything new, or you're still confused, right? You need some more information. So if you can just answer that poll, great. You should see that on probably a secondary screener at the bottom of your screen. Great. And while people are filling out the poll, Paul, thank you so much for that mention in chat. We're definitely going to talk about that during the discussion. So Paul mentioned lenses. So specs, oh, sorry, my screen just went down. Yeah, so things like focal length, focus distance, or minimum focus distance. Cool. Yes, those are some great use cases. Okay, great. And it looks like some questions there that we'll definitely get to during the discussion. That's great. All right, so we'll give just about 10 more seconds on this poll. So if you haven't answered the poll yet, please do. Right. Great, and I do see we have a question chat, and then Asa listed some things like memory cards for cameras. Such a good example. Okay, all right, I'm gonna go ahead and end the poll. So if you haven't taken it yet, that's okay. But I'm gonna go ahead and end, and I will share the results. You should see that on your screen, but I'll just review it. So it looks like a few of you absolutely you've needed attribute searches for years. The majority said, I'm open to allowing patrons to search using attributes. So sounds like open to it. A few said, okay, we're very simple, don't want any extra complexity. Don't worry, for those of you that said that, that's perfectly fine. You can leave today's presentation and not make any changes. But please hang with us. You may have a use case for these searches. I'll also be highlighting some additional new features during the demonstration. So hang with us, and you may also know of another center at your campus that needs it. Some are still confused. Yep, I would be too. So I'm going to go into Patron Portal now and actually demonstrate this so that it's a little clearer. Okay, great. So I am going into my patron portal, and I am right now logged in as my student, Ron. Ron is wanting to reserve a laptop from our Media Services Center. So I'll click the new reservation button, and he'll go to our Media Services Center. Right. Now, the times look good for Ron. He agrees to our terms and conditions, and now he's going to hit Browse Catalog. From the Browse Catalog, this may look slightly different than what you're used to, in that these are all attributes in the tiles that you see on screen. Ron could click in any one of these attributes in order to search for resource types that match that particular attribute. But Ron is wanting multiple attributes to search for his equipment, just like I did on that B&H website. So I'll hit this search modal, and that's going to open up all of the attributes that he can use for searching. He's looking for, as I said, a laptop, and specifically one that's powerful enough that he can work on his design project for creating a poster. So he's going to look in the operating system Mac. He'll save it, and so it adds that attribute to the search. For laptop specifications, just like you saw in B&H, Ron is wanting to make sure that this laptop is a little faster. He's not just working on a Word document. He's actually going to be building out a very large poster. So he's going to look for ones with RAM that are at least 48 gigabytes. So he'll add that. And he's going to go ahead and add RAM 64. So you can add multiple of the attributes from the dropdown. It's so simple to do that. I just hit the green checkbox and it adds the attribute to the search. For software required, he wants to ensure that the Adobe Creative Suite is installed on the computer. He'll save it. Great. So all of these attributes now are a part of this search. Ron isn't going to use the rest of these. They're not needed for what he's looking for. So he'll just hit the search key. Great. Now this brings him right to the resource type that he was looking for, his instructional Mac laptop. So we'll go ahead and select that. Now from this resource type page, you may notice right away that As part of our improvements in this new release, we now allow multiple images to be attached to resource types and attributes. I have two displayed on screen, but you could have much more than this. Also, we're now allowing multiple URL links. So under the description, you may see a link to a Wikipedia page, as well as to the B&H page where we purchased this laptop. Below will list all of the attributes that are tied to this piece of gear. And if I hit show more, I can see any additional attachments or attributes that are tied to this resource type. As you can see, there's a lot of different ways to find this resource type through all of these attributes that are tied to it. Now, if Ron scrolls down, and he's just going to add this laptop, but as he's scrolling down, you may notice the similar types by attribute. This is one of my favorite new features in that it will suggest any types that share an attribute with this Mac instructional laptop. And ones that are listed first will be the ones that have the most similar attributes with the Mac instructional laptop. Now, as Ron is glancing at this list, he sees the HP Design Jet printer, and he knows he's got to reserve this to ultimately print his poster. So because these similar types suggested that, he knows that he's going to need to go to this and also add the printer. So that's one thing I really love about this new feature is it's so intuitive that it's going to be suggesting to your patrons, okay, what should they now add next? Additionally, lists are back. So you'll notice this list feature here. If Ron clicks on that, he has some saved lists for his editing equipment and his calculus equipment. He can select editing equipment and see all of the resource types that he's saved to this list. And right here, he can go ahead and add his MacBook charger because he's also going to need that for this order. Okay. Now, for those of you that are like, we love our resource type tree, we're very used to it, right? We don't want that to go away. Don't worry, patrons can always toggle between an attribute search versus a type search at the top of their catalog. You can set either to be by default. I've listed mine as by attribute, but I can switch it to by type, go to the top of my list, and I can also search by the typical resource type tree that your patrons are currently used to. All right. Now, I've shown you all some of the wow of this feature in terms of what your patrons are going to see. But let's talk a little about the how. So specifically how you as managers and operators can go in and set up these attributes and tie them to your resource types. Now, earlier in this demonstration, you saw that Ron saw that printer. The system suggested to select that. But I, as a manager, want on-site printing to actually be an attribute that he would select from. So I'm going to go into the operator interface of Web Checkout to add this. Now, attributes are fully importable, but I'm going to show you today how you can add them in the user interface. I'll go admin, organization. From this organization detail page, you want to make sure you're under this resource types tab. You'll scroll down, and then under resource attributes is where you can add additional attributes. I'll hit the plus icon, and I'm going to call this site printing. Great. And I'll add an image URL to it. And I'll hit submit. Great, right away, it'll add that new attribute to the bottom of my categories. If I click on it, I can add additional descriptions. I can also add additional images. I'll do that now. So I'll add in another image URL, right? I can add additional captions, other URL links, anything right here to spruce up this resource type category. Also, it is so simple not only to rename, to add these descriptors, but also to reorder this list. So I know that my students are heavily using our on-site printing for all of their design work. So I'm actually going to move this up right above our accessibility tools so that it's one of the early categories that they're going to see. And I'll go ahead and hit the plus icon to add some attributes to this category. So I'm going to call this standard size printing. And I'll create another. We'll call this poster size printing, which is what Ron was using. And I'll also just add an image URL to my poster size printing that I had available. I'll hit submit. And now if I click the drop-down caret by this category, I can see the attributes that I've added below it. If Ron were to go back into Patron Portal, which I'll do now, I can now see this. So if he just goes to the Centers tab and looks in our Media Services Center, great. Oh, whoops, I did not do an important step, which is why he's not seeing this. One thing you'll want to note when you add your attributes is you want to make sure that they're tied to the resource types that have those attributes. Otherwise, they're not going to see anything listed here because there's no resource types tied to them, which is a great feature because if you're building out your attributes but haven't tied it to anything yet, it's not going to clutter your system. So I'm going to go back to web checkout, and I want to make sure that I tie what I just added to my resource type, that HP DeskJet printer. So I'll hit the Resources tab, and under Find Resources, I'll go to HP DesignJet. And from this resource type detail page, under the Details tab, we now have this new attribute section where you can click Add, and I'll select that on-site printing category we just added, and then the attribute poster size printing. I'll select the plus icon, and now that'll link that attribute I just added to my resource type. So now if I go back to Ron and refresh the screen, we see when he's looking in the media center, he'll now see that attribute because it is tied to a resource type, on-site printing. Now, Ron could use the search modal, and you see the on-site printing there if he was using multiple categories, or sorry, multiple attributes to look for his equipment. But if he's just looking for one attribute, you can always click in the tiles. So he'll just click on-site printing. We'll select his poster size attribute, and there he gets to that printer. All right, well, hopefully you all can see how adding attributes could streamline the reservation workflow, make it more intuitive, and also just enable patrons to search or to really narrow down their search quickly. Well, we have also helped streamline the operator workflow. So I'm going to go into web checkout. And we have assisted with this particularly by creating what we're calling content filtering. So I'm going to go into an existing reservation, this one by Jesse Spano. Right? And I'm going to stage this reservation. Now, for those of you that aren't familiar with staging a reservation, this helps you track the pre-packing process of an order. So I'll select Stage Reservation. And from here, we have this new content filtering section. This is particularly helpful for those of you that manage really large orders. I know I have a number of clients that I even see on the call today, that typically have well over 100 items per checkout. Well, now with this content filtering, I can click this drop down arrow and I can look just for items that are reserved by ID or just those reserved by RRT. I'm going to do that now because how that'll help is it will collapse any of these resource type names that don't have items reserved by RRT, and you'll only see the resources that are still reserved by RRT. So this tells me these items haven't been assigned a specific resource ID yet. So I'm going to go to my shelf and pick up my graphing tablet and my graphing calculator, and I'm going to scan in their barcodes. Great. And I'll grab the other barcode. So not only can I flip between RRT and ID, but let's say again, you have 100+ item order. You've brought some of the equipment over, you're getting ready to scan it in, but you can't see where it is on this form. You can type in the name, okay? And it will pull up only the items that are matching that name. And let's say this particular item isn't barcoded. I've pulled it up and now I can use the manually scan button to manually scan in those items. Great. Now, for those of you that aren't using staging, not a problem. This feature is also available in the allocation detail page. So if I close this out, right on the main page of your allocation, you can see that same drop down as well as the content filtering section right here. Okay. All right. Well, hopefully now with a better understanding of attributes, we want to hear from you. So I would like to open the discussion for you all to share any potential use cases you have at your center, or if there's another center you can use at your university. I know some people shared in the chat, so we'll read some of those off, but just feel free if you would like to add to unmute yourself and share what some of the use cases you found are.
And AJ, while customers are unmuting and getting ready to participate in this discussion, I do want to highly encourage you, when you all do upgrade or get a test instance on this new release, when you are testing on Patron Portal, please do try it in mobile view. The search modal, calling that out in mobile view, it flows with the natural movement of the thumb and it's very apparent on the screen. So while you all saw it works very well in desktop mode, when you do launch Patron Portal on a laptop or your smartphone, that search modal is just right in the middle of your screen. So it's in a prominent place.
Awesome. Thank you, Jeannie. And I'll just look at some of the things people shared. So Paul Brown, I know we mentioned this earlier. So it looks like things for lenses. So particular specs you have, focal length, minimum focus distance, all that type of thing could be particularly helpful for you. Paul, I am curious, do the camera bodies you have, would that help in terms of matching those lenses?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a whole host of things that this could be applied to in terms of, mount types, megapixel on the cameras. I mean, you start to think it's kind of endless when you start thinking about it, all the different things. The things that are top of mind are things that customers are always asking for, like, I need a lens that is this speed, or I need a lens that is this focal length. But maybe they're not familiar with all the things that fall into that category. I think the key to this is going to be how you implement it, though, because we've using kind of the B&H analogy, which is pretty good on their site. But there's definitely examples of other e-commerce sites that haven't implemented things like this well, and you end up with endless attributes, and you don't get good results. But since you're building it yourself, that should be good. One other thing in the Patron Portal view, I'm just thinking about, again, the B&H analogy is you run a search, you get results. But in the B&H analogy, and I think in others, as you modify the search on the left-hand side in their interface, you can then see updated results. Because sometimes you start drilling, you're like, well, I need an E mount lens or EF mount lens, and then okay, I want to drill in essentially, as opposed to doing all the search up front, because then you can narrow your results down. So that might be an interesting idea potentially. But yeah, I think it has a lot of potential. I mean, you start thinking about all the things that customers ask you for, and if you can allow them to search for those things, there's a lot of potential there.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Paul. And one thing I'll note too, that if patrons, they've set all their attributes and, they want to maybe drill out, right? You always can just go back to the search modal, remove any of the attributes you've selected, and it can expand back out. Okay, great insight. Asa mentioned, so for cameras, different types of SD cards, memory types, internal memory capacity. Okay, great. Asa, I am just curious, have you all had issues with patrons, say, reserving a camera and getting like a memory card or reserving something else that doesn't fit it? Has that been an issue in the past?
We don't really use reservations that much. It's mostly just first come, first serve. They show up at the counter and ask for what they get. And most of our cameras, the SD cards are just in them. But some people want a specific thing, or they need a lot of times they need a specific amount of record time. Like if they need to record something that's really long, they might need more capacity.
Gotcha.
And
Okay.
we have some older cameras that use a really weird codec that's kind of annoying, so we kind of try to avoid those. So that's why I wanted to put that in there as well, like being able to filter out. Those are like the last possible use case. But yeah, things like that.
Thank you so much, Asa.
And AJ, Sandy has a question, and I'm going to couple that with Sabrina's question about the attributes. Is it only searchable in Patron Portal, or would staff and student be able to search on these features in the operator side? So those who are familiar with the find screens in web checkout, your find resources, as well as your find resource type screen, they now have this search term resource attribute. So you can multi-select your attributes. They'll show up in the results as well. So you can search in those two screens specifically, the find resource and find resource types by attributes. I think that answers the question Sabrina may have. As for Sandy, does that answer your question? I think you also are looking for the groups that are currently using the resource type.
Yeah, I mean, it's for me, it's kind of more about data collection. So sometimes I do a search for a specific piece of equipment and I want to see like who's using it or how often how many people have that one thing reserved in a period of time, that kind of thing. But at the current way that I see how to search, it like shows me all 100 things that they have in their reservation. And I wonder if there's a way to filter now so it just shows the one thing I'm looking for as opposed to the whole order.
And you want to search by the attribute on the order, in the order?
Well, I guess for me, the attribute would be like that specific camera name versus like the whole order. But
Yeah.
maybe another way. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, in all of our find allocation screens, you should be able to search just by the resource type name or the resource name. So
well, when we do that, for me, in my experience, and maybe I'm doing it wrong and we could table that for a sideline, but when I do a search within the allocations and I say this particular thing, it pulls up all 100 things, and that's just buried in the paragraph somewhere of all the things that that person has. And it'll pull up like all the different people, but it's kind of hard to gain data from that because I have to sift through its 7-point font of a really long list to find.
we have a solution. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
okay.
I can follow up with you, but to answer it quickly, it's under the resources menu, find resource schedules.
Okay.
That's the report that you want, that will line by line put your items on there, and you can narrow it down by the specific type. So
Awesome. Thank you.
no problem.
Great question. Thank you. Thank you so much, Sandy. Awesome. Well, I will want to take time just to showcase. Asa has a question about adding multiple images, but I do just want to pause and see if anybody else had, other use cases that they have or they know other centers have, just before we go into some of those specific how to set up questions. Okay, great. Yeah, I'm going to share my screen again. Okay, and I'm just gonna go out to back to web checkout. So Asa, that was such a great question. And I believe it was specifically about either attributes or resource types, how you can add multiple images. So if I go resources, and I'm gonna go back to that HP Design Jet printer. Okay. If you want to add multiple images, this is now under the details tab of your resource type detail page. This is where you now will add any description you have for the resource type. Where it says images, if you hit the plus icon, so I'll just add a URL as an example. Okay. I'll paste it and hit submit, and then that adds that secondary image. Additionally, you can add captions to any of your images, and this is the same place where you can add URLs that are for additional information. So things like the B&H website you found it on, or a page for more information, things like that. So hopefully that answered that question. Awesome. Okay, let's see. I think
AJ, Romeo has a question, and I want to answer his question or address his question with a question. So Romeo asks, is there a way to know what attributes were selected in the portal for each reservation that was created? And Romeo, I'm going to ask you, why do you need this information? Why would that be important to you?
So I'm just thinking if I've added like 15 or 20 attributes to a resource type or have those many attributes available, if students are always just finding it by the same 2 or 3 attributes, then maybe I don't need to have all those extra attributes. If this is something I'm doing long term, like every time I'm at I'd be curious to know what attributes got them to the resource the most.
Got it. Okay. So this is just to better tailor your option so it's more pertinent to your customers, right?
Mm-hmm. Or even if I saw the type of attributes that they were using, right? Then I'd make sure to have those types all the time.
Got
or
it.
that like a group of attribute or a kind of attribute, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
At this point, there isn't that information on the reservation, but we'll make note of that, and that's your use case.
I was just curious if
Yeah, there isn't at this time, but that's
okay.
good feedback. That's good to know.
such good feedback.
Thank
you. I'll also just address, Asa, thank you. So further question on attaching images. So yeah, Asa, there's 2 ways to attach images. One, if you have currently housed images, so maybe you have like a photo library at your school, you can just paste those images like that image URL like you saw me do. If you're attaching JPEGs or PNGs from your computer, you can use this attachments tab. It looks like a little paper clip. Add your attachment, make sure it's public if you want it displayed in Patron Portal, and then that URL, what it generates is what you would attach in the images. So again, if you want to attach it directly, use the attachments tab. But if it's already housed, you can just add the URL here. Okay.
Can you streamline that a bit? Like put a checkbox on the attachments tab that says make this the image for this device, so we don't have to deal with copying and pasting the URL within the same portal?
That's great feedback.
I mean, that's the reason that we never did it, because the uploading in bulk via FTP that somebody mentioned is just, that was clunky, and I never wanted to deal with that. But if I can just upload a JPEG that I find off of Google and click, this is the image for this thing, that's simple.
Well, the concern there with uploading from Google is that they may change that address.
No. I'm saving and I find an image on
Oh,
Google, save it
got
to my
it.
desktop and upload it to you, and it just lives in you.
Sure. At this time, no, we don't have that feature. We have what's available now, and we do have services. We're happy to do the work for you. If you can provide us with the images, that's professional service hours. We're here to help.
Great, thank you.
Not quite worth that. Just like the checkbox would be easier than a copy paste.
Sure. Also, thank you. I'll definitely submit that feature request. That's great feedback. All right, awesome. Anybody else just have any type of attribute use cases they can think of? Great. And I think just in the last conversation, Greg, I hope we answered that question. If you attach directly, it is saved inside of web checkout. If you're linking it from some other site, then it's just dependent on that other site. Okay, great. All right, well, everyone, we are just so excited to introduce this new feature to all of you. And hopefully today you've seen that it is simple to set up, as well as we, as always, are providing documentation pages on how you can set this up. But we do, of course, recognize that it's the beginning of the semester. You all are very busy. You have much bigger fish to fry. So if you do happen to have a professional services bucket, I know Jeannie just mentioned that, we can use that toward us helping, like walking you through setting this up and even doing most of the work just on your behalf. So if you do have a desire for us to help you, we can set up all of the categories and attributes. We can also work to streamline your data and workflow, as well as update your email templates based on some of these changes and provide you a test instance. You can test it all out and so much more. If you don't have a bucket of service hours, please reach out to me directly, or you can email services@webcheckout.net. I would be more than happy to help you get that set up today. Now, finally, as always, I do want to encourage you to please reach out to support@webcheckout.net so you can schedule your upgrade and take advantage of attributes this semester. We always are just hoping to continue to ease the burden that is on you and on your team members. We're hoping that this semester you can rest easy, just like Ryder is in this photo. So I do want to thank you all so much for your time today, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone. And yes, Paul, attributes are live now in the December 2024 release.
That's right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks, AJ.